guys, Mega Pie here. Welcome back to another episode of Kyle is Famous, Kyle is Detective DLC. And we're gonna... Yeah, I think there's 2 more endings for Jerry the Hot Dog. I think. So we're gonna do that one, and then we're gonna go on to the next type of endings.
Kyle
which I
donned
think
a
is the
dusty
next
detective
mystery
suit,
we
complete
can
with
choose.
a pipe and an old ascot.
Okay, exit the hallway. No, wait, I messed up already. Restart. Okay, change jobs.
Kyle thought,
Become detective. Skip. Start day. Open the closet. We get some clothes. We go back to the room. We sit at the desk. We check the drawer. We grab assorted change. We go back to the room. We exit the hallway. We leave the apartment. We go downtown. We visit the dollar store. We buy some magic wipes. I thought they said windpipes.
Kyle purchased the magic wipes. The packaging read, made for transporting something to the magic dimension.
Uh-huh. Okay, and then we go back to the city hall. We get our case from the mayor.
Kyle exited.
And then we skip to the end of the day.
It was time. After Kyle, the corpse did
Use
not seem
magic
eager
wipes.
to respond to Kyle in any way. Kyle removed the magic wipes from his pocket and started to wipe the corpse with them. Within a moment, it disappeared, teleported to the magic dimension. A moment of awkward silence followed as Kyle slowly grasped the problem that he created. Kyle slowly turned around until he was facing the crowd of photographers and city officials. The crowd, frozen in the poses they had been while the corpse was still around, were all frowning at him. Because the case was now completely unsolvable, everyone packed up their things and went home.
It was a bear, so did it really matter in the end?
The next day, Kyle was not offered a case by Mayor Tom, nor the next. Kyle had not solved the mystery of Jerry the Hot Dog Boy.
Okay, we reset. Change jobs. We become a detective. We skip. We start the day. We go to our closet. We choose an outfit. We get some clothes.
Kyle donned a dusty detective suit, complete with a pipe and an old app.
We leave. We exit the hallway. We leave apartment. We go downtown. We talk to civilians. And we talk to Rachel.
Kyle entered Rachel May's studio. "Oh, Kyle," said Rachel, surprised. "It's good to see you. What's up?" Kyle decided what he wanted to talk with Rachel about.
Okay. We're gonna ask about Jerry the Hot Dog
I'm currently
Boy.
investigating some crimes possibly committed by Jerry the Hot Dog Boy. Do you know anything about him? Have you ever bought any hot dogs from him? Rachel smiled. "Yes, I know Jerry the Hot Dog Boy. He's such a darling. I bought a hot dog from him once. He pulled a knife on me, but I'm sure he didn't mean anything about it." Rachel smiled sweetly. Kyle decided what he wanted to talk with Rachel about.
Let's ask about the bug vigilante.
Rachel, I'm trying to get information on the bug vigilante. You wouldn't happen to know anything, would you? "Oh, Kyle," said Rachel, putting her hand on his arm. "You ask such silly questions. What does that all mean?" "I'm a little busy right now, but maybe we can talk more about this at the interview later?" She smiled at him. "Well, since I'm a detective now, I think I might need to spend my evening doing that." "Ooh," said Rachel. "You're all important now and stuff." She playfully punched him. "That's okay. We can reschedule for a different time.
Aww.
Time when you're not so important." Rachel smiled at Kyle once again. Kyle felt just a bit sad he wouldn't be interviewing her that night. "Well, go, said Rachel. "You've got big things to be taking care of." Kyle nodded and walked back onto the street.
Huh. Interesting.
Kyle was struck. Kyle.
I wonder if she has anything else to say, because it
Kyle
seemed. Ow! Meh.
Kyle decided to spend some time gathering information from the locals roaming around downtown.
Oh, you can't. Okay, that's interesting. You can't talk to Rachel again. Huh. Alright.
Kyle was to
Let's put on clothes. We exit to City Hall. We go to the mayor's office. We get the case of Jerry.
Kyle nodded. Kyle.
And then we skip to the end of the day and we get Rachel solved somehow.
It was time to investigate the alleged crimes of Jerry the Hot Dog Boy. It was a very rainy night, just as the sun. Neighbor Gat. Good evening,
Nod.
Hello!
Oh, also from your partner.
Rachel May stepped out from behind Mayor Tom. After you told me that you were spending your evening investigating crime, I got really inspired.
Uh-huh.
So I talked to the secretary in City Hall and became the second person to pass the detective examination this week.
Nice.
Rachel smiled cheerily. Kyle decided that he was interested in being partners with Rachel. Rachel, I believe that together we will be able to solve this crime. Kyle and Rachel nodded at each other. After a couple minutes of other chit-chat, Kyle decided to start investigating.
Get Rachel's help.
Suddenly, Kyle realized he had no idea what he was doing.
Oh boy.
Rachel, he whispered, motioning to her. Come over here. Rachel slid over next to Kyle. What's up? Have you figured something out?
He suddenly realized he has no idea what he is doing.
Rachel, said Kyle, I don't know what any of this could mean. Do you have any ideas? Rachel looked at the body on the ground. Let me see what I can find, she whispered. Rachel began to comb around the scene, looking at each detail twice. After several minutes of searching, Rachel turned around and motioned to the body. Did anyone notice this is a bear? Everyone gasped.
A bear! Who knew?
It's not even dead. It's just asleep.
Uh-huh.
Idiots!
Screamed Mayor Tom.
The crimes committed in this city are so amateurish. Where's the excitement? The gravitas?
Well, my desk made a weird squeaky noise. That was interesting.
Mayor Tom started to scream utter gibberish. He stalked off the scene, red in the face and sputtering. There was a moment of silence. Well, we can catch up with him later, I guess, said Rachel. Here, someone help me with this thing. Without much trouble, the remaining individuals managed to transplant the bear outside the city. Job done, the team turned to the front of City Hall to debrief a bit from the evening of detective work. The group chatted back and forth about how the investigation had gone and what to do next. But they parted ways with a chilly air above them all. It felt as if that night was the start of something much more diabolical.
Ooh, I got a new thing. Unlocks. Oh, I got the last trail. This is Pink Flip. It makes me feel jolly. I'm going back to Ducky. Okay.
Kyle woke.
We skip. We change jobs.
Kyle thought-
We become a detective. We skip.
Today-
We start. Okay, let's open our closet and get some clothes.
Kyle.
We exit the hallway. We move to the kitchen. Let's grab our helmet.
Kyle.
We go back to the hallway. We go to City Hall. We enter the mayor's office.
Our sit.
Ah!
Kyle nodded. There's no question. I know exactly what mystery to.
I love clicking
Kyle
too
thought-
fast.
Kyle, today. Kyle,
Turn the hallway, go City Hall, be enter the mayor's office.
Mayor. Kyle
Okay.
rifled through the cases.
The
to
mystery
decide
of a
which he would
thousand
investigate.
eyes.
Kyle nodded. There's no question. I know exactly what mystery to investigate this evening. Mayor Tom looked at Kyle sadly. Excellent. All of our hope is riding on you. Don't let us down. Kyle exited Mayor Tom's office to prepare for his evening of investigation.
Okay, we skipped to the end of the day.
It was time to investigate the mystery of 1,000 eyes.
What does this even mean?
Kyle slowly approached the dusty, rotting mansion that had called into the police. Kyle used the knocker to give 2 sharp raps on the massive front door. The door slowly swung open, revealing a flabby man in a white-stained tank top. The man spoke. Want a beer? The man leaned forward and started gurgling, eyeballs slowly oozing out of his mouth, nose, and ears. Kyle realized that at this moment, his investigation began.
I'm gonna hate myself. Investigate with taste.
Kyle unhinged his jaw and swallowed the man whole.
Kyle needs to stop eating people.
Kyle began to digest, gaining information from the juices his stomach produced. The man was 40-some years old. He owned several dogs. His favorite music genre was postmodern classical. But before Kyle could learn more, he heard a muffled voice from within him.
This ain't how Barry goes out.
Barry sprouted from Kyle's mouth, using his hands to spread Kyle's jaws open and push himself upwards.
Oh.
Kyle tried to push Barry back down to continue his investigation. The two fought over control of Barry for several hours. Eventually, wearied of the fight and just generally irritated, Kyle lost it.
Barry!
He shouted.
I am trying to do you a favor!
Barry stopped squirming in Kyle's stomach. Kyle heard a muffled sob. I know, man, I know, said Barry, but I got things in my life I don't want you to know. Don't want anyone to know. I'm a broken man, he continued, full as much as anyone with problems and mistakes. Barry, said Kyle gently, we've all made mistakes. We've all done things we aren't proud of. Little should I be the one to judge you for what you've done. Let me know, Barry. Let me digest you. Barry didn't say anything, but after a moment, he nodded once. Kyle's digestive juices kicked into overdrive, dissolving every atom of Barry's being all at once. Kyle was overwhelmed with information pertaining to Barry. Suddenly, he knew every detail there was to know. Kyle had no way of sorting through the massive amount of information that had come to him. He began to sweat. Sensing an overload, Kyle's body rejected the digested Barry soup. Kyle spewed Barry all over the sidewalk.
Give me 1 second. To type this. Is that even the right one? No, that's a stupid. That's the wrong file. I'm trying to change something over here. File. No, wrong thing. Maybe that one. Okay.
The stomach juices evaporated on the sidewalk, sending Barry floating off into the sky and on to a new adventure. Kyle had not been able to determine the cause of Barry's mystery while he had all of his information. But he did remember one thing. Barry was a good man, and he hoped that wherever he was, he would be loved and accepted.
Okay, then.
Kyle did not solve the mystery of 1,000 eyes.
Okay, we reset to case.
It was time. Kyle realized that at this moment, his investigation began.
Let's slap him.
Kyle decided to try to slap some sense into the man.
Hey! Snap out of it!
Kyle screamed. He grabbed the man by the collar and started roughly slapping with his other hand. The man... After a while, Kyle decided to change tactics. "Sir, you are respectable," said Kyle, "and I understand what you are going through, but my motives are pure." Kyle hoisted the man on his shoulders and prepared to fling him into the ground. Suddenly, the man fought back. He grabbed Kyle by the shoulders and swung him above his head, throwing him into the air. "You are most noble," said the man, "but I must insist that your methods are somewhat rude." The two fought back and forth, muttering compliments to each other as they did.
This is such a weird act of, I'm not gonna say it, but I'm thinking it.
Eventually, however, they began to tire. Agreeing to take a break, Kyle and the man walked to a nearby diner and shared lunch together. They talked of the local political climate, their favorite drinks, the weather, and many other things. After several hours, the two parted ways amicably. The next day, Kyle was fired from his job as a detective for completely botching his investigation.
Oh. You skip to the options.
Kyle realized that at this moment, his investigation began.
Let's be empathetic.
Kyle felt a wave of empathy come upon him. "Oh, you," said Kyle. "I'm so sorry." Kyle began to pat the man on the back. Suddenly, Kyle began to empathetically spew eyeballs out of his mouth. Kyle and the man's eyeballs began to mound on the sidewalk, forming an impassable barrier for cars and pedestrians. Kyle became empathetic to the people he was causing trouble. His legs and arms seized, keeping him from moving. Kyle's empathy continued to grow, reaching every person and thing across the whole globe. Kyle, now mega empathetic, was struck with every bad thing that anyone was experiencing all at once. Kyle ballooned in size and began spinning. His pores started to spout steam and his body began to let loose a low whistle. However showy, though, Kyle's empathetic efforts were to no avail. Kyle realized that his empathy, however noble, could not cure things like eyeball vomiting. However, through his spinning and spitting of steam, Kyle was able to generate a fair amount of electricity. The city took Kyle and hooked him into the electrical grid. Over the next several years, Kyle produced a large amount of the city's power. Kyle Power became a source of engineering study along the lines of wind and hydroelectric. Kyle was awarded several honors for being such a dependable and low-effort source of good for the city. Although Kyle's new career had given him so much acceptance and love from the city, he still felt somewhat hollow. Kyle never solved the mystery of 1,000 eyes. It was time to investigate.
Let's see what happens if we look for
at
clues.
this moment, his investigation began. Kyle pushed past the oozing man to look for clues inside the house. The inner atrium was dotted with bookshelves and rugs. Every surface was filled with trash bags full of vomited eyes. Suddenly, Kyle had an uncontrollable urge to hide and see if anyone found him. Kyle started to run around the house, looking for the best hiding spot he could find. Kyle considered hiding behind the couch. He ran his fingers across the top, but he continued on. Kyle opened the cupboards to see if there was enough room to fit inside. He thought he might be able to, but he moved on. One by one, Kyle exhausted every possibility he could find inside the house, all except one lonely door at the back. Kyle walked slowly towards the door, taking each step deliberately and carefully. Soon, he stood in front of it. Timidly, Kyle reached for the doorknob and began to turn. Slowly, the door opened. The crack grew bigger and bigger, allowing Kyle to see what was inside.
It was the back door.
Kyle found that the door hid a very special goo pit, filled to the brim with seething, fragrant jelly.
Why was the jelly seething?
Overjoyed, Kyle dove straight into the goo pit. Kyle sunk straight to the bottom. He did not resurface. After several days of not being seen, a separate detective force was sent out to find the whereabouts of Kyle. They searched the house top to bottom, but found no clues to go off. Kyle had simply disappeared. Kyle spent the rest of his days at the bottom of the goo pit, delightedly clutching his knees and waiting for the seeker to find him. Kyle had hidden himself very well.
Okay, reset to
It was
case,
time to-
skip choices, look for clues.
Kyle pushed past the inner atrium was dotted with bookshelves and rugs. Every surface was filled with trash bags full of vomited eyes.
I think when we think like Rachel is how we solve it, so let's browse through the house really quick.
Kyle decided to pick through the man's belongings and see if he could find anything incriminating. Kyle began to open drawers and cupboards, looking briefly at each item they contained. Kyle found notes, flashlights, accounting records, phone numbers for friends, batteries, and many other things. As Kyle searched, he grabbed items he found interesting and put them in his pocket for later. After several hours of searching, Kyle had found nothing he could arrest anyone for. Disappointed, Kyle slowly walked out the door, past the vomiting man, and back to his apartment. But on his way back, Kyle realized that his day had not been totally wasted. Kyle's hand dropped to his pocket. Inside were still all of the treasures he had found in the man's house. Kyle decided to sell the evidence items to see how much he could get for them. After talking with a few pawn shops, Kyle was able to acquire about $20 for his items. Overjoyed, Kyle decided to make another run to the house to see what else he could find.
Oh no.
Over the rest of the evening, the man's house was slowly drained of everything inside it as Kyle sold more and more. But once it was emptied, Kyle was not satisfied. Kyle began tearing chunks of the wall out of the house, creating a pile to sell to a nearby lumber company. Piece by piece, Kyle dismantled the entire house, selling its materials as scrap. Soon there was nothing left. At last, Kyle felt like he had done as much work as he was able to do. He stood looking at the clear space, and he smiled. Kyle walked past the man, still hunching and vomiting, for the last time that day. He patted him on the back. Kyle was able to return home feeling accomplished. He had done a lot of work that day, and he was tired. Kyle fell onto his pillow and went to sleep immediately. He had not solved the mystery of 1,000 eyes.
Huh. Okay.
It was Kyle.
Let's think
The
like
inner atrium-
Rachel.
Suddenly, Kyle had an idea. If Rachel were in this situation, Kyle wondered, how would she go about investigating? Kyle remembered how Rachel had solved the hot dog murder by looking at the simple clues everyone else had passed by. Kyle decided to do the simplest thing he could think to do: open the closet. Inside, facing outwards, was the Jam Man.
Hello,
Said the Jam Man.
would you like to buy some of my jam?
Hello, said Kyle. That depends on what sort of jam you are selling and at what price,
My jam is famous in all the land,
said the Jam Man.
and that enables me to charge very much. However, alas,
He continued.
many have recently complained that my jam is not what it once was. In a moment of weakness one night, I realized that I could cut costs by adding small amounts of other things to my jam. And so to the mixture I added a tablespoon of blended rat. The jam was excellent and profits soared.
What is this voice?
Clouded by greed, I began to add more blended rat into my jam recipe. I began making double, triple what I had before. But one day, I went too far. Just over half the jam was of rat. The jam was not great. It was hardly good, and the public noticed. I was too far gone. Slowly, the blended rat took over my brand, turning more and more into a staple of my goods. So here I am,
Said the Jam Man.
sitting in the closet. Will you pardon the Jam Man his faults and invest in his passion?
The Jam Man held up a jar of substance. It seemed to be a slimy paste full of suspect organs and eyes.
Oh, heck, I can't say no.
The man walked up behind Kyle as the jam man talked. He brushed Kyle aside. The jam man gleefully opened the jar and shoved the contents down the man's throat. Immediately, the man turned around and began to hurl eyeballs onto the floor. And suddenly, Kyle realized. "My gosh," said Kyle, plucking the jar from the jam man's hand. "The eyes are coming from the rats in this jam!"
Oh.
The jam man scowled at Kyle and made a cry of frustration.
You may think you have won, clever detective, said the jam man, but I haven't lost yet.
The jam man suddenly melted into a jam-like substance, slid under Kyle's legs, and out the door to freedom. The man and Kyle looked at the space the jam man had been in. There was a silence. There was nothing to say. Eventually, Kyle left the house knowing that the man would vomit eyes no longer.
Huh.
The case had been solved, but as he walked home, Kyle remained a bit troubled. Kyle was sure the jam man would return.
Interesting.
Kyle thought,
He actually solved
Kyle
the
was
case
str-
on his own.
today,
I want to see if we can talk to Rachel again.
Kyle
We
decided
can't.
to spend some
What the
time
hell?
gathering in. Hello. I've come to resign,
no,
said Kyle.
no.
My life as a
Restart. Okay. We're good. We're good.
Kyle thought to Kyle scooped up the change scattered around the desk drawer.
Cry.
Kyle crumpled on the floor in tears. He cried passionately. He cried desperately. Kyle continued to cry with everything he had. Then, Kyle was done. He got off the floor and left the store.
Huh. By suction hand.
Kyle purchased the suction hand. Mayor. Kyle rifled through the cases to decide which he would investigate this evening. Kyle nodded. It was time.
Skipped choices.
Kyle realized that at this moment, his
Just look
investment.
for clues.
The inner atrium was dotted with bookshelves and rugs. Every surface was filled with trash bags full of vomited eyes. Kyle produced the suction hands and attached them to his fingers. Kyle slowly reached out toward the nearest wall, intending to test his suction abilities and see if he could climb. Kyle pressed his hand against the wall. He drew himself upward and then retracted his arm to suction again. The suction on his hands was far too powerful. Instead of releasing, Kyle moved the entire house.
Dollar store suction cups. I don't think that's how that would work.
Kyle began shaking his arm back and forth, trying to dislodge himself from the wall. The house began to jump, twist, and turn. It rolled around and around, crashing into yards and trees all over the neighborhood. Eventually, Kyle was able to dislodge himself. Within a few moments, the house settled, leaving a cloud of dust in the air. Slowly, Kyle crawled outside to get some fresh air. Kyle found that he had landed in the giant lake of carnivorous cake.
Lake of carnivore cake. What?
Kyle was immediately attacked by several hungry carnivorous cakes. Kyle spent his evening fending off the cakes and slowly making his way back to the crime scene. When he arrived, he found that nothing had changed outside of the house being completely missing. Kyle decided to leave his work for the day and take some time to rest. He returned to his apartment weary and covered in small bite marks. But But
So I try again
unfortunately,
next day.
the cakes had already devoured the entire house and all evidence along with it.
Hmm.
Kyle did not solve the mystery of 1,000 eyes.
And with that, with Kyle meeting cakes, we'll end this episode here. If you like, hit the like button. Want to see more, hit the subscribe button, notified whenever I upload, hit the notification bell. And it's just Felix, my page, just turn up our stores, all that fun jazz, along with the Game Store page and Game Devs page as well. I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.